and I'm the Director of Graduate Career Development here in GSAS Compass. And we're joined today by Joseph Wong, who's an alum from the physics department, graduated in 2018. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to let
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Great. Oh, and his daughter, Harper.
This is Harper Wang. Say hi to everyone.
We have another guest.
Yes, this is how I usually work from home, of course.
Insight into people when we see some applause. We know it's not easy too, that you're it looks very cute, but it's not easy to be handling a 2-year-old while you're trying to work. Great, so I'll just let you introduce yourself rather than me trying to. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself to get started?
Yeah, sure. It's my great pleasure to be here. I spent like a wonderful 6.5 years at Columbia. Might be too long. Yeah. I actually changed my path a lot. So I joined doing optical physics. And then after 2 years, I felt like I'm really not so good at experiments. So I went and do simulation in biophysics. And then I did a lot of different things. So I did an internship in a biotech company in China called BGI. Some of you may know it, and doing machine learning in there. And then after that, I joined Google as a data scientist. After 1 year, I did not find data scientists to be my true love. So I switched to software engineering and machine learning. And right now I'm a applied scientist at Amazon doing machine learning for the optimization of the supply chain. Yeah. So if you find like your orders arriving too slow, that's probably on us. Yeah, I'm just kidding. But yeah, part of it is on us.
That's great. Well, I'm curious to know, let's start with that first job after graduate school at Google. Can you tell us a little bit more about what led you to be interested in that first job in data science at Google, and a little bit about what that hiring process was like?
Yeah, sure. I got interested in Google back in my undergrad, in about 2008, when I was still a student in Hong Kong. And we were using these, Hotmail or whatever, those emails, then it came with like 20 megabytes of storage, that tells you how old I am. And then I suddenly heard the news that Google is providing free email to everyone with 1 gigabyte of storage. And I was like, what is this company? I thought that they only make search engines. So that was like a really positive impression that I had. Like, I always have the impression that this is a great company to join, with all these fancy stuff and cutting edge technologies. Yeah. But actually, when I was applying, so at the end of my graduate study, I did this machine learning internship at the BGI already, and I felt it interesting. And actually, at that point, I did not know the distinction between machine learning and data science. So I'm probably going to come back to that later, but I thought I would be really interested in data science. So I applied on the website, for a lot of different companies, including Google. And after like 2 months, it's a long time, a Google recruiter reached back to me, and the process started like that. Yeah, I can talk about a little bit more about the hiring process later if you're interested in the exact detail.
Okay. I actually am just a little bit curious about in that hiring process, if you remember back.
Yes.
I guess 2 questions. One, was there like a technical interview aspect, and kind of what were the different rounds like? And what aspects of your experience do you think got you that first job? Like, what did the interviewers or recruiters seem to be most interested in?
So as far as I know, they mostly target science or natural sciences, including social science, PhD students with some hands-on data experience. So my experience at BGI helped a lot. So I was able to put that on to my resume to attract their attention. That's one thing. And also the first round, they actually send you like a questionnaire asking you a few questions that you will only encounter when you're doing hands-on jobs in either academia or industry. So it's not like a take-home exam in the sense that there's no right and wrong answer, but it's more like, tell me a hard problem that you face when you're cleaning your data. So something like that. So you only be able to answer that greatly if you have actual hands-on experience. So
Mm,
after that, there's one round of phone screen. So instead of the recruiter, now in the phone screen, you meet with an actual Google engineer and they ask you technical questions. And after that, there's an on-site round with 5 interviewers, each taking like an hour. So that's the process. So for data scientists, there's one round of statistics, there's one round of probability theory. I forgot what some of the other rounds are, like mostly around statistics and data insight. And one last round is for coding. So not like the lead code coding that you would do for software engineers, but more like MATLAB, R style of coding. You have a data table and you filter out some rows and that kind of coding.
mm. Great. So going back into your time as a graduate student, you mentioned that the internship you had was really valuable. What
Mhm.
else would you say were some of the most valuable things that you did as a graduate student? Maybe in hindsight, even if you didn't realize it at the time, or if you did realize it
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah, sure. So a few things. One is in terms of skills and ability. I think the most valuable thing is learning how to present my work. So to be very honest, I did not do super top tier work, right? But I think exactly because of that, I have to like be very mindful how I present it and make sure I bring out the insight, the significance, the context of that work. I think that helped me a lot when I was in my actual industry job. Also in my application, I guess. Not instead of branding about your job, you also brand about yourself, right? So that's something that's very valuable, and I think every graduate student should learn that more or less. Um, One other thing is I learned to find my interest and kind of do the research about it of the field. So if you remember, like I ended up not being very good at experiments, right? I wanted to do theory. So I was like going around all these different groups in the physics department. Some of them are full and they don't have enough funding for another student. Some of them it's like in an area they don't like. So just that process, and it's also stressful, right? But having gone through that process in a safe environment, you have a longer time to do that, and the professors are more open to talk to you than when you're actually in a job hunting and you get no response. That helped me a lot. So like finding your own your ultimate interest and what you want to do in your life can take a long time. And sometimes like the first trial might not even work, right? So I think that's one thing that I did that was like a good experience.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you didn't answer like any technical skills that you learned, but rather it was the importance of communication skills,
Hmm.
and then the importance of kind of listening to your own, realizing that taking control of your own path and realizing that
Right.
graduate school was a really good time to do that. And if something wasn't going the way you wanted it to go, to take some control and try to get the most out of your graduate school experience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the most important technical skills for my work I was actually gained by just self-learning. So I had like this friend that I have, like same university we went to. He actually recommended a lot of good learning materials to teach myself about data science and machine learning. And then a lot of the machine learning skills I picked up when I was at my internship at BGI. So yeah, but in terms of the technical physics skills, I haven't been able to find super good use of them in my daily job.
But I'm sure that it comes in handy, just like having the ability to learn how to do technical things like that has probably come in handy.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Well, so now I'll ask you to go back
Mhm,
to some of the things you've said. First, you said like you thought you wanted to be a data scientist and you didn't
mhm,
quite know the difference between data science and machine learning. So can you say a
mhm.
little bit about those things?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, there are a few different data scientist roles in different industry. So in internet industry, like Google, it's pretty heavy about statistics and A/B testing. Not too much machine learning in there. But if you're looking at like a fintech role or hedge fund data scientist, they they will be much more machine learning heavy. But they're not like the kind of machine learning that you would do, that you will hear, for self-driving cars or detecting your face detection, or natural language processing, that kind of machine learning. The fintech type of machine learning is more like really optimizing for the sparse matrix multiplication or sparse matrix inversion. They want to squeeze out the last part of the computation speed out of it. So it's like a little more low level implementation of machine learning. So yeah, so I don't know if I answer that question exactly. Yeah, but I think that that's the difference. Yeah. So in tech companies, most of the real machine learning jobs are belong to the software engineer job family, or sometimes they have like applied scientist or research scientist titles. Yeah, but I rarely see any data scientists do a lot of machine learning in internet companies.
Hmm. So then you realized when you were in that data scientist role that it wasn't exactly what you wanted to be doing.
Mhm.
And how did you move then to that other role? Was it easier now that you were already in the company?
So I spent some time on my current job to figure out if it's possible to keep working as a data scientist but do machine learning. So I was basically talking to a lot of more senior data scientists, and also like people who are actually doing machine learning, and ask them, hey, do you think like a data scientist can be doing what you're currently doing? So after a while, I figured out the answer is probably no. So, but usually it's very flexible in these tech companies that you can switch your roles. You just have to prepare like you would for an external interview, but they have a simplified version of an internal interview, and you pass it, and you can switch your job family. Yeah. So in my case, I found a sweet spot because it's the same field of projects where I was doing data science for trust and safety department, fighting abuse, misinformation and abusive material on Google. I was kind of able to go to the same department, but working as a software engineer. They're just hiring at that point.
Mm.
Yeah, so um, I guess you cannot jump out of the blue to a totally unrelated job role, but if you're still in the same project scope and you're just switching roles, that's easier.
Mm. And did you have to learn more technical skills in order to make that jump?
Yes and no. So no, because my internship is more about machine learning. So I already kind of have all these machine learning skills. I just haven't been able to use them, right? That's the motivation to switch. Yes, because it's in the job family of software engineer. So they actually require more rigorous coding skills. So I go to lead code, prepare myself, and things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we had two students asked questions. You said that that a lot of the actual like some technical skills that ended up being useful were self-taught.
Mhm.
And a couple people wanted to know, how did you actually learn them? Did you take like Coursera courses or something, or how exactly did you learn those skills?
Mainly Coursera courses,
Mm.
because my time right now is like pretty fragmented, as you can imagine. So like the Coursera courses are like bite-sized. They have like 5-minute videos. It's a great resource to learn. The only downside is that they might be a little more expensive, too expensive. $50 per month. So while I was as a student, I have a little more of like longer chunk of time.
Mhm.
I just basically read books. So it's good if you ask people. I can give you a book list at the end if you're interested in data science. But in the field that you're interested in, ask them. So what would a book like you would recommend?
Mhm.
Yeah, just read the books and do the exercises. I think that's the way. Yeah. So I believe like as PhD students, we all have enough ability to teach ourselves new things. Yeah.
Mhm. That's great. I'm sure the students would appreciate that book list if you still have it. So I'll make sure to
Mhm.
get that from you.
Yeah. Sure.
That would be great. And so I have a question about networking. So it sounds like you mentioned this one friend you talked to who was very
Yes.
helpful.
Mhm.
Did you do any other networking in your course while you were a graduate student looking for exploring careers and looking for jobs?
Yes, I tried pretty hard, but it wasn't very successful. But I think it might be easier now. It might be easier if you set up your LinkedIn profile first, and then reach out to alumni. I think that'll be the most helpful. So right now I'm at the other end of the networking scenario, right? Then I start to realize I would be pretty open to Columbia alums, for example, if they, especially if they have a similar background, like a science PhD student or something, right? Um, then I can, be much more open to respond to them and talk to them. Yeah. So a lot of these tech companies, in terms of like the internal reference, a lot of these companies start to realize this might be a little overused. So in the sense that um, they start to distinguish between the social connects and people that you really know and work with. So even if you get a social connect recommendation, it might not be too useful. I think what would be more useful is asking them more about like what would be asked in the interview. What's the interview process like? What are the typical questions asked? And I think how can you better prepare yourself? I think that's would be better. Yeah,
Mhm.
more helpful.
Yeah. That's really useful. I know we spent a lot of time talking to students about the value of informational interviews, that you can get that kind of insider information about a company's hiring process or
Hmm.
interviews, or we even have a question in the chat. Someone asked, do companies count independent study as adequate experience? And I'm not sure kind of what you would say. So, you can't put on your, or maybe you do. Did you put on your resume? Like, I mean, I guess you put the skills that you knew. Did it matter how you learned them?
Um, is the question more about like if you take like 5 courses on Coursera, do you want to list them all as achievements in your resume and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I used to say no. I used to recommend no because sometimes it sounds cheap, to be very honest, right? I sometimes see it has a having reverse effects. But on the other hand, recently I met a very talented research scientist at Google, and her profile is filled with a long list of basically every single Coursera course that she's taken. So I started to change my thoughts a little bit. Yeah. So I would say it still depends. But I think having something is much better than having nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you really can't get any internship or academia projects about the specific skill set that's required. I think it's better to list the Coursera courses or any other self-taught certificate
Mm-hmm.
than to have nothing on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of internships, I just have one more question about your time in graduate school. You said you
Mhm.
had an internship.
Yes.
Was that unusual for your program? And did you have to kind of get permission from your advisor to do that? Or kind of what was that process like?
Oh yeah, it was very hard. So first, it's very unusual for physics, right? You can imagine it's very common practice for computer science and things like that. And my advisor was really unhappy about it. So looking back, I really should have done a better communication with him. rather than kind of, die hard and kind of force them to agree. But that's a different story. But still, like, without that internship, I guess it would be impossible for me to start this career. So anyway, so a super good relationship with your advisor. If you're not doing very well in your research, right, it ultimately still doesn't help you to get a career in academia. So like you have to think about the benefits. So in my case, I'm an international student, so it's super hard to get internship. Um, I think the company's thinking is that they treat you as future potential employees, right, for internship. But if you're having like H-1B issues and things like that, they don't want that, except for like these tech companies. So usually it's hard for international students to get internship. In my case, I have to like, oops, Harper pressed the mute button. I have to like ask my dad's friend to give me like some internal reference for companies back in China. And eventually I got an internship there. But yeah, having an internship is very um, important. It's just difficult for international students.
Yeah, it sounds like you really thought kind of outside the box and however you could get that experience. So if, after looking into the job market in the US, looking in China, and since you brought up being an international student, how has that affected your job searches? And I also wanted to, the last question kind of I had is about your move to Amazon, because we've mostly talked about your time at Google, but how has being an international student, how did that affect that initial job search and since then too?
So if you want a career in like a tech companies, that actually doesn't affect you too much in terms of like the practical things. Like they help you apply for H-1B and green card and all that. What affected me more was my eyesight, because I was always heads down, and I have a lot of friends, from the church as well, but they are a very homogeneous background, right? Most of them are also international students, also studying, if not in natural sciences, but at least also in grad school. So I have a very homogeneous source of incoming information. For example, back in 2012, right, when I was not feeling very well for my experiment studies, that was the year that machine learning actually took launch, right, with the AlexNet and the image recognition competition. I was totally unaware of that. Looking back, I probably should just get a master in computer science and hop onto that. But I guess, yeah, that's the impact I'm talking about. So I have like a very limited eyesight of things happening around in the industry and all that. Yeah, so if you can find any opportunity, make a friend with a very different background than yours, then that'll be very helpful.
That's great advice. And so last question, and then I want to open it up to students, is just tell us about that transition then. So you worked in 2 different roles at Google, and then went to Amazon, and you also moved from Silicon Valley to Texas, where you are now, to Austin.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about that transition and kind of why and how?
Oh yeah, sure. So that was like the direct trigger was that my wife's company was not doing very well, and there are rumors of layoffs. So she actually started looking, and she's in like a small niche of industry. So she didn't find any job in Silicon Valley. So she found one in Austin. So that's how I started to look for jobs in Austin. Yeah, so I tried a few other companies like Facebook, but failed. But this one actually worked quite well for me. A good match for my skill set. Yeah, so that's how I got to Amazon.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think we'll open it up for student questions now. So we can stop the recording, and we actually